of DJ Gibbs, Dark Child, basically setting the pace for the weekend. And that's just giving you an idea of what's lined up for you on the show as we continue. Hot topics are also lined up for you. They'll be coming up not too long from now. But for now, it's time for the Dawn Debate. And I'd like to introduce the panel. And joining me here to my extreme left, we have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. We also have Ora Michael, who is part of the Red Card campaign. And in case you're wondering what the Red Card campaign is all about, that's what we're going to be discussing right here. Remember, you're welcome to participate in this conversation and let us know what your thoughts are. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Let me start with you, Ora Michael, and basically give us a brief background of what the Red Card campaign is all about. And I notice you're also in red. I don't know if that is symbolic.
No, that's Jubilee.
I'll not get there. Thank you for the invitation. The Red Card campaign is a simple campaign. It's a people-centered campaign. It's anchored on it's a cumulative effort that comes out of a realization of just the intensity the intensity of corruption in the last 4 years, if you may, in this country, and more importantly, the impact, direct impact that gross corruption, if you may, or theft of public resources, abuse of office has had in terms of service delivery. We are still grappling with devolution on things like maternal and child health. What it has done in terms of incapacitating the members of parliament to be able to be partisan to the constitution. Corruption has compromised the capacity of independent institutions to fully implement their mandate. And we felt that it is probably time, if there's an important moment in which both citizens and institutions have an opportunity to ensure that we minimize the number of corrupt individuals and persons who are ethically challenged, if you may, from getting into close to public coffers and public office. It is during elections. Mm-hmm. So it is timely because we are in elections, but it's a national discourse that must transcend the elections.
So what exactly is your objective when you forward the names that were given to IEBC? What exactly are you trying to achieve by that?
A couple of things. One, and I think we've shared the names with the IEBC as the frontline institution that is in the focus, under sharp focus right now, because it has the final word on the clearance of candidates for election. I should say that we are anticipating that the IEBC will act in public interest and that it will help us avoid the roots of corruption that have been planted in the last 4 to 5 years from growing into trunks of absolute corruption in this country. Mm-hmm. And that they'll take the decisive, though difficult task, to bar people who have significant ethical and integrity issues from running for office. But I also want to say that it didn't start with the submission of names. I think we launched the Red Card campaign about 3 weeks ago. We invited the media. There was significant coverage. But in that launch, we made very clear and declared a 90-day public campaign period. And this declaration or sending of the names is not the end of it. A couple of things we did. One, we've had multiple consultations with the faith community, who have also been quite in the front line in speaking to the scourge of corruption. We have submitted a memorandum to political parties ahead of their primaries. We sent them information. We sought to engage with them. We urged them not to clear in their nomination persons who were ethically challenged and who had integrity issues, because we realized that the political parties and the nomination process is a critical part of vetting. So we want political parties not to assume that the vetting is a reserve of the IEBC, because the lesser, the more we reduce the number of people who end up at the IEBC, the easier the work it is for the IEBC.
Okay. All right, let me come to you, Ambrose Weda, as a lawyer.
Yes.
First of all, your comments and your thoughts on what the Red Card campaign is trying to achieve. And this, of course, is based on the fact that we are heading towards election. And secondly, that they are pulling out names that possibly don't seem to be the threshold of Chapter 6.
Thank you. I think the Red Card team, mm-hmm. Their initiative is fairly good. It is true in the public domain, there are issues that need to be debated, investigated, and dealt with in one way or the other. Corruption has been there, this continues to increase. There are other areas, looting generally. But speaking as a senior lawyer, what they are aiming at is not within the law and would be an affront to the law itself. And that would be a recipe itself for confusion and chaos for this country. The law is applied in the legal context and also a political context. The fundamentals of our laws, especially the Constitution, has one fundamental thing. One is the human rights. In those rights, you have the right to be presumed to be innocent until you are proved guilty. The only organ that the people have delegated the responsibility of proving you guilty is the court. And the court undertakes what is called due process. So any person, however heinous the allegation of crime is against you, you are perfectly entitled to be deemed to be innocent until proved guilty, and then you go through the due process. Let us look at it that in 2013, our current president and the deputy president were facing crimes against humanity at the highest court in the world. And the court, these issues were litigated here in Kenya. I was part of the team that were arguing on these issues in Kenya. And a 5-bench court decided that reaffirmed the constitutional provision of innocence until proved guilty. So where we are today, they have sneaked in a list. And IEBC also have wrapped up the list under a desk. And they are saying, when you come in, we will give it out. Show you, oh, your name is not here, your name is there, this and that. That is wrong, because there is the next thing, which is called the right to be heard. Even God himself, when Adam and Eve did their mess in the garden, he gave them that right. He told them, did you? Mm-hmm. Did you eat the fruit? Mm-hmm. I told you not to eat. Now here, IEBC and this team should have told Oparanya or Sonko or Kidero or any other that for us, we suspect that you're involved in this. What do you say? But when IEBC are here saying that because people would get injunctions, in fact, because the court can intervene, we will not let you know until you come in there. I'm telling you, the court will intervene even after. Mm-hmm. Even if they were to reject today, even if they were to reject names on the 7th of August, the court will still intervene and even stop the elections if due process is not followed.
All right, Orwag, looking at the timing and looking at what legal counsel has said here in regards to what the law requires, it is true that some of the names fronted may be questionable. It is true Kenyans may perceive them in a certain light. Though all that may be true, but when it comes to the law can only operate within a certain rules and regulations, and that being the fact that unless they have been proved guilty, then they are innocent.
Absolutely fallacious. In fact, that is how we've ended up where we are in this country. Mm-hmm. We are the only country in the world that has Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity, that the Constitution makers, the fathers and children and youth and mothers who made this Constitution, sat somewhere in a dark or well-lit corner and realized this country where we had reached, we needed something abnormal and unusual. Despite all the requirements and the constitutional provisions on human rights, and rights to everything, and rights to being heard, like the legal counsel. I think the legal profession is part of the biggest challenge we have in the building an ethical tradition in this country. Despite all that, our constitution makers thought that where we had reached with corruption and abuse of office, we needed something special and extra. And they built Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity that laid out the fundamental guidelines on what should be expected of a public official. He has made a reference to ICC, which means he has actually not interacted with the red card list, the methodological note, and the framework and justification note, then the criterion.
Okay, give us briefly what it is all about.
One is that when I started off, I said we are dealing with issues. In fact, some of the people in the list of 20 have issues beyond 2013. Those are not listed as the reason why we want them barred from running for office. We are very clear that the particular life of this particular parliament and the executive, which began after the election of March 4th. So we've kept to that particularly. The second reason was things and issues or concerns, ethical issues that have resulted in major impact on marginalized communities, for example. We've kept an inter-party, across parties, ethnicities, regional blocks, kind of a diversity of that list. Also a diversity across the political, the 6 positions. We don't have a presidential candidate precisely because none of the things that we looked at included any of the current presidential candidates. But I must also say that this list is not exhaustive. And in the spirit of public participation that the Constitution emphasizes on, we are very clear that there's nothing special about the red card list of 20. Any Kenyan has a right, just the same way the president appoints or proposes members of cabinet, and they go to parliament for vetting, and parliament invites public participation. This is in that spirit. In fact, we must encourage more citizens to do more of this. Now, on the question of innocence until proven guilty, now, I think it's a very minimalist understanding of the vision of Chapter 6. Extremely minimalist. Because that is how we've ended up with a lot of shenanigans around the courts, between EACC, the back passing from the CID, from the investigation to the EACC, to submission of ODPP, to the courts declaring lack of evidence. But now, the Chapter 6 drafters, and the Constitution that we passed overwhelmingly in this country did expect more than a criminal standard on public leadership. It was an ethical standard that is much higher than the threshold of legal standard.
Who becomes the judge of ethics? Who decides who is more ethical than others? But I'll come back to you, Ambrose.
Allow me. I think it is time for civil society to collect money from their donors so they come and rubbish everything. Now, let me remind you that Article 1 of the Kenyan Constitution says sovereignty of the people rests with the people, but it has been delegated. And the people can decide even to turn this country to a parliamentary democracy, presidential democracy, or a dictatorship. If we all sit and say, now, this is what we want to do. Therefore, their right to elect leaders of their choice, of whatever, and I'm saying of whatever character, if the Kenyan people decide we want so and so, they have the same right to alter the Constitution and say this. For now, they have put certain fundamentals, the right to be deemed to be innocent until proven guilty, the due process. All this, if they were left to the civil society, to sit in a corner somewhere as they sip their coffee, and then they come and they draw lists, and then we use those lists to bar people, everybody will be bad. That is why we know the world over, and constitutionally, that there is only one organ. And that one organ is also supposed to follow due process. If you look at the circus that was in the Senate even yesterday, Professor Nyong'o himself wants to be a governor. He went and elected himself in a corner somewhere, wherever. He wants the same governor of Kisumu that he robbed to come before him so that he is bad. That kind of circus, if it was allowed, then people would be calling their friends in civil society, Bar Getonga here, Bar Weda there, Bar so and so. That is why it has been left. Let the courts, if you have a problem, you go to the courts. And the courts, if they bar you, you are finished.
So I think Ambrose completely missed a very fundamental point I made. And it's intentional because he's probably holding brief for some dark elements and cartels that have compromised the struggle against impunity in this country. And precisely, if you listen to him clearly, he's certainly holding fort. But I will not honor your disrespectful
That's blackmail.
statement about donors because some of your imagination is confined to idea of donors and Western. So I'll not honor you. I think you are a senior counsel as you introduced yourself, so you have an obligation to self-respect. Now, having said that, I think I want to be understood clearly. And I want to agree with him, though he chooses the path of disrespect. I want to agree with him that the ultimate power and sovereignty belongs to the people of this republic. And I said that the red card 20 is not an exhaustive list. And we do not think we occupy any special place. We are just a group of civil society organizations, Kenyans, who think that it is time we drew a red line on something that has bothered this country, that the president himself confessed is actually an existential threat, a national security threat to this country. Corruption.
Who?
The president of this republic. So it is in public domain. We have political parties that have said that they will not allow leaders who lack integrity to contest. We have faith communities that have organized and said there's nothing that is bigger than a threat to this country today than corruption. So it is not something unique to us. And in the same spirit, I say that every Kenyan, in exercise of that sovereignty, has a right to intervene in this process. So it is possible that there will be more lists coming. I don't know if there will also be red card 20 or green card 20 or blue card 20. Now, the right, that sovereignty of the people, which he cited, can be exercised both directly and indirectly, and I hope he agrees with that. In exercise of that direct authority, I also say that IEBC can still bar, and we are, by submitting the list, we are respecting an institution. It doesn't matter the challenges it has. No independent institution in this country has not suffered the affront by the political class and their tyranny of lawyers who hold their courts across the streets of this republic. Now, we are acknowledging that as it is right now, and the court has prevailed on this, the same court is praising, that the IEBC has the final word on determination of who runs for election on the basis of integrity and Chapter 6. The courts or tribunals have made clarity on the question of Nancy Baraza on what Chapter 6 ethical leadership and integrity is and what it is not. So there's precedence in the same courts that he's citing. What we are objecting to is that we have been taken through this circus to an extent where today the best thing that could happen to a thief is to actually be taken to court. Because they say, if you can buy a judge, why need a lawyer? Now we know the EACC has a whole list of many people, and part of the list that we, the sources that we, because we have source documents, we started from 1,500, we reached 34, which we then sieved out to a 20. And there's a criterion. You can disagree with the criteria, but we encourage everybody to develop their criteria, so long as it's anchored again in law and documents that are available within EACC.
Allow me to pose you there, Aura, because it is bound, there are questions that are being asked. There is the political feeling around this and also the timing that it has come in. And allow us now to listen to what Senator Njoroge had to say regarding that particular list. And I'll want to hear from you two gentlemen what you have to say on that. And on Thursday, the Integrity Alliance released a list of 20 politicians they want barred from participating in the August 8th election. Well, some of those names have already begun pointing fingers, like the senator in this particular video.
I would say, and I want to repeat, all this is being orchestrated by none other but William Ruto, because I wonder why his office was mentioned when the NYS saga was being investigated by PAC. But I cannot see anybody from his office in this list. It means he's using the KNHCR officials, or rather office, to block some people like us from contesting, just because of the past feeling that we are not ready. Some of us are not ready to support him in 2022, and. It won't change, whichever the case. My question is, why is the deputy president not in this list? Why is someone like Raila Amolo Odinga not in this list?
All right, so of course, raising political temperature and muddying the water, your comments to what the senator has to say.
First, I think the senator needs to get his facts a little bit right. So I think he's mentioned the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, which is a state independent body. So I'm not sure whether he's commenting in the context of the petition in the Supreme Court that is actually seeking the final interpretation of the law on the question of what is the minimum threshold for Chapter 6. And I think that also, in a way, dovetails very well with the Red Card campaign. Now, and just to say, and I'm not holding forth for the commission, the commission's search for answers from the Supreme Court is timely because we are the same courts that my co-panelist seems to hold in very high regard, just like I do. The same courts have given quite contradictory interpretations of the question of Chapter 6. So one high court would rule that innocent until proven guilty, another one will pass somebody else. And so it's not been quite consistent. And we thought that the intervention by the National Commission is timely to actually get the final word on what exactly should guide the legal profession in the interpretation. Is it an ethical standard or a minimalist criminal standard? But I think I smile when I hear that, where is Ruto, where is Raila? First, again, I'll come back to the question of criterion. There's nothing you can do without a clear criterion. It is possible to disagree with the criteria, but you have to understand it first. When I was in Red, I was referred to being in Jubilee. So that is also on a light touch. But it's also true that we've had those kind of sentiments that this is Jubilee, this is ODM, this is what. But one of the things that we were very clear about, that corruption does not know political parties in this country. And if you assume political parties stand for anything in this country.
Maybe just so that we're clear.
We are happy that we are being accused both sides by both political divides.
But so that we're clear, one of the questions he has asked there, and maybe many Kenyans are asking that, and it'll probably take you back to the criteria, is why isn't Raila Odinga on that list? And that is because, according to him, public perception is there are questions of integrity. Why isn't William Ruto on that list? Again, based on the list that you have, the 20 plus William Ruto, maybe there are those who feel that possibly they should be in that list. So maybe you need to answer that question, why they're not in that list, in a very simple word so that we go back to Weda.
But it comes back to the simple thing I said, that we had a very clear criterion. And so the two things. One, there's a criterion that left many people. There are people who are dropped out of that list. I told you we started with a list of 1,500. And to actually, unless you're asking that, then we actually pull out and go through step by step. I'm happy to do that in a different space because I'm assuming we don't have
bound
the
by time.
Yes. Right, yes. So there's a clear criterion, and I'm happy to share that, the entire write-up. Like the dossier we presented to the IEBC was quite elaborate. Now, that's number one. Number two, remember, I've said that this is based on a group of people and institutions who, using a particular criterion, arrived at the notorious 20, if you want to call them that way. But it is no assumption. In fact, we are not making any assumption, and we hope Kenyans do not interpret the red card list of 20 as the only and most corrupt people in this republic. And that's why I keep saying that every Kenyan with good intention has a right to actually raise the fundamental questions we are raising and say, look, this person has done 1, 2, 3. We don't think they should run. And we have governors. Governor Cyprian Awiti of Mabay, for example, has a court case by citizens, his own voters, against him in court. Citizens can take that initiative and raise the same questions that we are raising. So it doesn't have to be that the list of 20 is exhaustive, and we are not assuming any supernatural.
And secondly, there's a criteria why those 20 and why not anymore.
Three things. A gang of 20 or read something as they sip and smoke whatever they are smoking.
This gentleman has a love for smoking.
They take names. They take names and then they dismiss. They dismiss the judiciary. They dismiss the legal profession. They dismiss everybody else except themselves in their corner. And they even dismiss the provisions of the Constitution. What a tragedy in that group. I want to come and see what you smoke. Number two, let me clarify to you. IEBC does not have the final say on who contests and who does not. IEBC follows the Election Act. and the Constitution. And the Constitution and the Elections Act sets out the qualifications. The only other person who can add the final qualification is the court. Is the court who can say, with all, you have met all these things in the Constitution, you have met this in the Elections Act, but we have now found you are convicted of corruption, your appeal has failed, it has come to an end, you cannot now hold public office, therefore you cannot run. You better know that, first and foremost, as you spring with the names. Number 3, I saw some senator somewhere on TV saying Ruto has put his name there. He's denying that he was not with the Mheshimiwa William. It has become a fashion that if your maid runs away, or if you have a problem with your wife, you find out whether he passed through Arambe Avenue and you blame Mheshimiwa William Ruto. For everything. In fact, we want to blame Mheshimiwa William Ruto for everything. Even we are going to blame him for this red card 20. So we are saying, IEBC should know the law exists, and it should let the citizens enjoy their freedom by walking around with a list, but they have to follow the law. If they do not follow the law as it is, they are asking for chaos.
All right, I need your closing comments.
We have a serving MCA who has convictions, who is currently facing 8 counts of murder and rape.
Yes.
Who is a serving MCA and is planning to run again.
Yes.
And I'm coming to you as a lawyer because we need a conscious conversation about this as a nation. Despite all our positions, titles, and stuff, we are Kenyans, and this country is ours. We have Andy Rango, who has served as an MP, who has a conviction. We have a convict who is waiting appeal in a jail somewhere, who wants to run. You have children, I presume. I do have a daughter.
Yes.
She's 3.5 years old.
Yes.
She's going to a nursery school.
Yes.
If today her teacher is accused of sexual molestation in that school, and they are arraigned in court, or they are about to be arraigned in court, your guess is as good as mine that I will pull my daughter out of that school. I will not wait for this thing you're talking about, because there's a threshold expected of people who take care of children, that I will not wait for this mythical thing about innocence until proven guilty. My pulling my child out of that school will not be a decision that this person is guilty.
Okay.
I will be taking a precaution. And if you cannot entrust that teacher and that school with your child, you are about to tell us that though these people have been convicted or have been accused, that these people have a tradition of violence against others and incitement to violence against one community to another, that these people have undermined law, like the case of Keter in the Weighbridge. Absolutely unacceptable for a person who is supposed to be withholding law and creating laws for this country. You want to tell me that we should trust leaders of that caliber because we are waiting for a process that can take 10 years in our courts today? I have a problem with that, because ultimately
I'll have to pause you there because of time, and I think that would be a good place to finish.
Let me just conclude
very briefly.
Let me just conclude by telling you that the mere fact that you are charged, people like Honorable Raila Odinga were in detention for 9 years, people like Mandela. So please don't, when people are charged, don't think they're guilty until the due process.
Absolutely.
2, let us not be emotional when we are dealing with fundamental issues of democracy, management of a country. Allegations are there. Let us give everybody due process. But above all, the sovereignty of the people is the most important. If they want a criminal to lead them, you have no say. You can only, they have their way.
I do have a say. It's a lie.
Okay.
Because my taxes will be, people have a right to their thief. That's what he's saying. But that thief will be paid with my taxpayers. That thief will sit in a parliamentary committee that is passing criminals into cabinet positions and into ambassadorial positions and stuff. So it is a fallacy to say that they have a right to their thief. They will be paid by money that comes from my taxes.
You don't want democracy.
Time doesn't allow us, but I think what you're talking about here is a question between the legal and the moral. And the question is, who makes that decision? I believe it is the voter that will make that decision at the end of the day. But I think we'll need more time to delve into this. And that is talking about the 20 who are named by the Red Card campaign. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Because of time, we'll have to wind up that right there. That's Ora Michael, who is the program manager for Society of International Development, and also Ambrose Wedder, who is a lawyer. And we're getting ready now to go